Okay, I think we got a couple people joining online. So the time being 8:02 a.m. on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. I'd like to call to order the Westborough Economic Development Committee meeting. I think the first thing on the agenda today, obviously we have our new coordinator, Mark. Switch seats. We miss you over here, but welcome you over there. So congrats, and obviously we're excited about your new position. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes from last month? Any questions? Everybody good with it? All right, then I think we'll have to do a roll call since we have a couple people online. So Alexander, yes.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
A motion.
Thank
right?
you. Yeah, my guy who used to do my motions is gone. I forgot.
I'll move the minutes.
Yeah, Bagden, yes?
Kenny, yes.
Actually, we need a second, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh, second,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're all. You see what you did to us,
Mark,
Mark?
you're throwing us off.
Lenaro seconds.
All right. So with that, thank you, Sean, for pointing that out. And Alexander, yes.
Bagden, yes?
Kenny, yes.
Lenaro, yes.
Gingras, yes.
Keo, yes?
Is anybody online?
And do we have anyone online yet? No? Nope, no one online.
Sandra and Mark, I think we're both talking about coming online, so.
Okay, well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have enough for a quorum, so it passes. All right. Next is, I guess I jumped the agenda a little bit, but we have Mark, the introduction of our EDC coordinator. Mark, did you want to say a few things, or?
I mean, I think everyone knows me. I just
Yep.
wanted to, just introduce myself, and anyone that doesn't know me, that I'm excited to be in the position. My hope is really to, see what the committee wants to do and work with you guys. I think it's a pretty light lift on the committee. We meet once a month, but to really kind of be more interactive with the community and helping to get the word out. We have some new grant programs coming and some stuff we're working on that I want to really get out there. So I'm going to lean on some people to maybe introduce me to some people, because as much as I've been around for 4 years, 5 years, I don't know as many people in town as I think I know. So you guys have been doing this a lot longer, so I'm going to lean on you guys to introduce me to businesses and the people that I need to know. So please don't hesitate to connect me to whoever you think is a good person for me to say hi to. I'll figure out how I fit them in my world, but I'm happy to do that. I'm excited to be here.
Great.
So thanks, guys.
I think I'm sure if you haven't already, you will be pulling the goals that Zach had put together previously, and obviously,
Yeah, I mean, I have a little something I can show you, but basically my hopes are to keep going on the, we're in the midst of I'll go into it later on this, but the women minority business study, following up on the grant program, the wayfinding signs. There's a lot of stuff in the pipe, and then next month I didn't put it on the agenda, but we need to talk about goals for next year, what we want that to be. Some will come out of that study, I'm hoping that they're going to give us a few tangible pieces that we can really have something to bite off of for next year, but then, see where else we want to take things, talk about the breakfast and all those things, again, that are all going to come pretty quick, I guess, now that I realize that. So.
I did just get a text from Mark Verow saying he's waiting for the host to let him in.
Sandy said the same thing just now.
Uh-oh.
She's waiting on him.
Am I the host?
No, I think it's.
Should be
Oh, maybe it's
Westborough
you.
TV.
I don't know.
If it's me, I will go in and make sure I don't know if I have Zoom on this computer.
No, then you wouldn't be the host.
Sorry, folks.
It's probably Westborough TV then.
It might be because I'm new with this. Let me start first.
You would, if you were hosted, you would already been logged in, so it's not you.
Okay, so they were the host, unless I didn't make them a host.
It is.
All right, let's.
How are you the host if you're not logged in?
I don't know.
Doesn't make any sense.
We should help him with the downtown stroll. Because I think
We'll just give it a minute here.
Sorry.
No,
folks.
don't worry about it. We're already ahead on the agenda, so we got some time.
There's a ton of turnout. Did they come over to you?
When I did that, I can't remember my password now. Sorry, people. That's what I get for getting ahead of myself.
I feel like somebody else must be moved. Do you think Sela did it? Right, but you can't. If you're not logged in, you can't start the meeting. So it doesn't make any sense. Let me see. Yeah, see, I think Westborough is.
Looks like Mark is in now.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
I'll
great.
put it on the T.
Sorry, guys.
We're just missing Sandy.
Went down.
Right, okay.
Now I'm on there. Let's see if anyone else is waiting.
Mark, can you hear us?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
I wasn't being let into my laptop, so I just turned my cell phone on and it worked.
Oh,
I'm
There we
gonna
go.
try it on the laptop again.
There's Sandra and Scott. Sorry, guys. There we go. That should be Sandra and Scott. I let in now, too.
Oh, it wasn't my equipment?
No, I think it was my fault not setting it up correctly with Westborough TV. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay, I'm going. Okay, so my laptop is waiting to get in right now. I set it up again.
And there you go. Should be joining now if it lets you.
Whatever you're doing, Mark, just a little.
Yep.
There we go.
so do we have Sandy and Scott as well?
It says on my meeting they're there.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'm gonna switch to the laptop.
All right, so we have everybody now. Sandy, Scott, Mark, all remote?
Yeah, well, I'm technically here. I'm technically there, but not remote. Sorry about that, folks.
Nope, all good.
Okay. All right. Well, next on the agenda is the vice chair elections. With Mark's departure from the committee and going over to be the coordinator. We obviously have an opening for vice chair. Any comments, any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Sandra Kearney.
Second?
All right. Any other nominations, comments, anything? Okay, let's,
Roll call.
we'll do a roll call. Alexander, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Williams, yes. Williams, yes.
Leonardo, yes. Keo, yes.
Then our folks online? Anyone? Did we lose them again?
No idea. I see them. They're on my laptop. I don't know why they're not there.
We just heard him a second ago.
The Zoom that was on the, where did we get our, from the calendar invite led to this Zoom, which Mark was on and now he's not on it.
And I have everyone from my calendar invite here.
Okay, can you send that, an invite from that Zoom? Sorry, guys.
No?
Might be another Zoom. Exercising
Should we skip to, Todd, do you want
Well,
to skip to any of
Yeah, I
that?
think it's, so, well, the vice chair election, I think that the majority, so that's, somebody can break the news to Sandy that she's the vice chair. That would be great. So you want to skip to, let's see, I think we should hold off on the community center, because you're going to be, if I understand, you'll be looking for a vote from, in support from the
Yeah.
EDC
I
today.
can do
So
my report.
why don't we start with Fred then?
Sure. So community development, really, the news is that the news is not good. We've actually slowed down quite a bit from inspectional services, so kind of predicting that for a while. It's the feel we haven't gotten for many years, where the economy's kind of in a funk. So even our major commercial projects have been kind of stagnant right now. So that's not necessarily a good thing. The other thing, I'll actually wait to talk about change of occupant until we get the whole audience back on, because they may be interested in that too. Something I apologize if I haven't brought to this committee before, but it's important to know as business or property owners what that means, and a permit that we've had instituted for a few years.
Okay. Anything else? No openings or anything that we've got, right?
No, I will say that we're trying to coordinate a ribbon cutting. We'll give it out to the board for racks.
Okay.
Mark's working with the chamber now to coordinate that. So that's been a little bit coming. They've been open for a while, but the operator of that business would like to do an official ribbon cutting, so that'd be great for that organization.
Okay.
So Mark can update you or you'll get notification when we actually get a date.
I just know right now it's a date going back and forth between the chamber and RAC's trying to straighten out a time that works for everyone.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta let you into the meeting.
All right, why don't we jump to the planning department report, Jamie? You would?
Yeah, sure. So 161 Milk Street, which I believe I spoke about last meeting, and is now in open hearing with the planning board. So they are going to be on the agenda tonight, and that is for the self-storage facility and then offices for MA Restoration. We also have received an application for 225 Turnpike Road for a Zoom Room, which is a dog training facility. So they'll be coming in to the planning board for a special permit review. And then the other application we received was for 134 Fisher Street. And it's a really interesting residential development. And it's going to be in the transit-oriented village, and they're one-bedroom units, approximately 620 square feet. So they're individual, single-family units, and they're geared towards single people or just couples, and then it's right there near the train station. So it's a really interesting concept, and I look forward to
How
seeing
many
it.
units are proposed?
There are 18 right now. They'll be doing septic, and then the plan is that they'll be doing a subsequent phase if it all works out, and hopefully they'll be able to connect to sewer eventually.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
So what, at least two of those? How many of those would be affordable?
2.
Two.
Yes.
Great. Any questions? Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Jenny. Let's,
Do we have Sandy on as well? I see.
Just so she knows she's vice.
yeah.
I think everything's working now.
Yeah.
Sandy, you there?
She was in the car, so she might have to unmute.
No, we see.
Looks like you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
All
Sorry,
right.
I couldn't unmute.
Okay. Well, congratulations. You're the vice chair of the EDC. So I don't know if you heard the vote, but
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited.
excellent. We look forward to having you as our vice chair. Let's jump back up to the update on the Main Street trick or treat with Mark.
All right. Just a quick update. The Main Street Trick or Treat is on for October 24th from 4 to 7 p.m. So far, I've done an email outreach as well as been on foot walking around downtown. Exciting news, the new owners of Bay State have asked to be involved, and they're going to be bringing in, they're working on bringing a donut, some kind of fried donut truck, like apple cider donuts, and potentially giving away pumpkins from Norse Farms as well, over near the Bay State Commons, still finalizing that location as far as that goes. If anyone knows of a business that's, in the relative area downtown, not too far outside, happy to connect them with me and I'll give them information they need. But hopefully, we're expecting 400 to 600 children is what I keep hearing from all the businesses. That's based on candy given away, I guess, is how they decide the numbers. But, so hopefully the weather holds out and everything goes well. We are looking for volunteers to do crosswalks. The police have asked for a little assistance in helping getting all these kids across the street. So I'm trying to see how many people I can find to potentially help just, slow traffic down. Not that the kids won't do a great job of that anyway, but to help with the crossing. So if anyone knows anyone that is looking to volunteer and doesn't have a business in town and wants to get involved, that's another way that people can get involved in town. So any questions or anything outside of that?
What day of the week is that?
It's a Tuesday.
Thanks.
Mark, I'll check and see if the Rotary Club, if we have volunteers, that's the kind of work we love to do. So I'll check with the club tomorrow.
That's what I was kind of hoping to hear when I said it out loud today.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Mark? That's great. This is obviously a well-attended event, and it's been very successful.
Everyone's
over the
excited
years,
about it, so
yeah.
hopefully, yes.
Do you have visuals?
Once I get more names, hopefully I'm gonna have all everyone that I could get participating this week. I get that to Jen. She's gonna make that same map we had last year with all the streets listed,
Great.
addresses, and Bay State has also offered to allow, if we wanted to mark parking to be a start point, so people could park their car at Bay State Common and make their way out into town that way,
Great.
as a way to start the festivities and help alleviate some of the parking issues in town. So they were
Okay.
very kind to do that as well.
Yeah, if you can just get that out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm hoping by
Ahead of
Friday
time.
I'm hoping to have a full list of names by Friday, and that way I can get Jen to have everything printed maybe by Friday, Monday at the latest, so.
Yeah, we've asked DPW to also post signs that hopefully the residents will try to avoid the Rotary, because it'll be a mass chaos during those couple hours. So we, it started off as just town staff, and it's kind of, the event has grown over the years, so it was maybe 200 people, of kids. Now it's like a bazillion.
Yeah, almost 500 I've been figuring.
I mean, if you know any residents that are in town, you probably want to tell them to avoid the Rotary at all costs during that time frame that day.
Yeah, I agree.
I do have one last question,
Yep.
sorry. How far down Route 30?
So right now, last year it went down as far as the CVS, the downtown
Okay.
crossing mall
Yep.
on that side, down to the churches over here. And then on South Street, it went probably as far as like the Central House on South Street.
Okay,
And then now is kind of expanding into Bay State. Last year, like Boston Interiors and Tavolino's and the gymnastic places were involved. So I don't know if
okay,
other places may in Bay State decide to get involved. I've warned anyone that's not in the direct downtown, like Main Street area,
Yeah.
that they might not see the kind of foot traffic that you might get over here on Main Street potentially.
Right.
So not to be, you know,
yeah.
disappointed if you only get 150 kids as opposed to, because like I said, just depending where you are, you do
Right,
get
right.
different flows of
Okay.
kids,
Cool.
so.
Great. Any other questions? All right, you're next on the agenda with the Minority and Women-Owned Business Study.
Not a ton to update. They have completed the business side of the study, so they've gotten, I think she said she got over 50 responses. So I think when talking to Fred, we figured we had, in the small business world, about 200, plus small businesses in town. So getting 50 responses is she said was a fairly good number for that kind of essay. She also had mentioned that over almost 60% of those responses identified as women, minority-owned businesses themselves. So we got a good, I guess if we found the businesses in town, we seem to have found the right ones. Currently, they're going through town staff and some leadership positions in different committees to get a feel for how they see and what they see as people go through their committees. That study is supposed to be wrapped up that section is supposed to be wrapped in the next 2 weeks. They're supposed to report back to us by the end of the month, so we're hoping, if everything goes well, we'll have a little more of an update with some more detail by the November meeting. And if not, by the December meeting, the whole full study should be out, so we can all have time to digest what they've given us, and we can hopefully use that information to build those 2024 goals going forward. Any questions or anything on that? All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mark.
Appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda is the Community Center at Bay State Commons update, or
I have some
presentation.
slides, so.
Need an adapter, I think? Do you have everything?
Yeah, I'm all set. Preview of the public information session slides.
And so you're you're presenting this tonight, where is that?
So tonight at 6:30 in the Memorial Hall, and then Thursday afternoon at the Senior Center, we're going to hold public information sessions.
Great.
Just wanting to be clear that they're really more of a Q&A.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot, and I'll talk a little bit about the plan to hold public engagement sessions if the town decides to purchase the building. That's not the purpose of these meetings, because that will be a whole charrette process. So if folks have, I'll just use this opportunity to say, if folks have thoughts about how we might use the building tonight, Thursday, that's not really the venue for that, because that input's not going to be recorded for the conceptual design. It's also not really the place to speak in favor or against the article. That's really for town meeting.
Right.
So as you all know, and I have a lot of slides, so I'll go through them quickly. But as you all know, we've been talking about the development of a community center for a very long time. So this just shows that going back to 2012, we were talking about it when we were talking about renovating the Forbes Municipal Building, which previously had a gym in there that was used quite a bit by the Recreation Department. At the time, there was this plan to create what we called a recreation center, which really was just 2 basketball courts and a few classrooms and then offices for the Recreation Department. At the time, I don't think there was any location identified, though in 2016, when we knew we were purchasing the state hospital property, the Recreation Department created a conceptual design that included a community center. It didn't articulate what was actually going to be in the building, but it did identify that it would be about a 26,000 square foot building. And the Recreation Department has started to develop some of this plan related to the fields, but no additional planning related to the building of the community center. Community center has been also identified through what we call guiding documents. So the 2018 strategic plan had this as a high priority. The the 2021 master plan had it, so there's many spots where we see it, but specifically under the open space and recreation goal 3, and then multiple action items that talk about the need for expansion of the senior center, investigating the construction of a multi-generational center, and then even investigating the provision of a municipal pool or splash park. In public facilities, goal number 3 also talks about the need for community recreation center, and then also evaluating the need to expand the town senior center. And then in economic development, talks about the need for promoting mixed-use development in the downtown, specifically around Bay State Common, potential for incorporating more entertainment-driven uses within Bay State Common, and doing teen-friendly activities within Bay State Common. So all of these things we think speak to this location and this development of this site into a community center. And then most recently we had the senior needs assessment, also called Aging in Westborough, and that was a survey that was sent out to 55 and older households, and then was also available online for anyone to participate in. And then we had focus groups and key informant surveys, and this document also really spoke to the interest in changing the current senior center. So through our key informant surveys, we talked about the need for the issues with the physical location of the current senior center and the desire for more space and active offerings. In the focus groups, we talked about factors that deter participation in the senior center. So some of those are the location, the age of the building, the inaccessibility of the building. There was a strong concern for driver safety, so pulling out of the senior center if you're turning left. Everyone, since we've started talking about this, have said, no, I turn right and then I turn around at the post office because of the traffic there. And then just limited capacity, so it's really difficult to have programs running in parallel because there's really only 2 rooms that can be programmed at the senior center. And then a key finding was also that the focus group participants felt that the town undervalued the seniors in the community. And so this is certainly an effort to show that we do value our seniors and really trying to move forward their things that we think will address their needs. And then finally, just talking about the physical space of the senior center, this was a key overall finding. And so with some action items specific to developing that Westborough Community Center. I went backwards, sorry. So the opportunity that I'm talking about is the opportunity to purchase we keep calling it's 1500 Union, or it's Boston Sports Club building, but it's the building in the back of Bay State Common. I keep saying a fun fact that I learned from Jim Robbins before he left is that when this was developed, it was supposed to look like Town Hall. So if you look all the way to the left, that's supposed to look like Town Hall. So what we did is we had approached the owners of Bay State Common with an interest in this building if it was ever to become available. And that was initiated because several years ago there were some sort of very preliminary conversations about that, but the potential for that building. And so, the owners came back and said that they were ready to actually have those discussions, probably sooner than we thought that they would be prepared for that. And so we did walkthroughs of the building and ultimately negotiated a price of $8.8 million for the building. And trying to as we're negotiating and trying to understand the value of that $8.8 million, so that's $139 per square foot. We've been told that in that market right now, it could cost us approximately $800 per square foot to build a building, which with the same size at 64,000 square feet, it would be over $50 million. And that estimate doesn't include soft costs. In looking at sort of the practical application of that estimate, in the town of Upton, they recently opened a community center that's about 15,000 square feet and was about $12 million. So it actually works out to be about that $800 per square foot. So just for the purchase of the property based on a 5% interest rate, which we won't know what the interest rate is until we borrow, the average over the life of that is $84 to the average single family, And then the highest cost year, which would be the first year, is at $113. This just shows the layout, which would be included in the purchase. So in addition to the building, there's several parking spots. So that red outlined area. The first floor of the building is the former Steinmart. It's 31,000 square feet. It's actually currently Spirit Halloween. And then the second floor is occupied by Boston Sports Club at 32,500 square feet. The total land area being about 2.5 acres. So as I mentioned, this is the first floor. The first floor is really just a large open floor plan. If you go into Spirit Halloween, you can see that, there's some sort of fake walls, so it looks smaller maybe than it is. But we have a couple of photos here of really the openness of that space. And so really what we would consider the ability to really fit that up because it is a blank canvas. The second floor is the Boston Sports Club. And so one thing to note, I think that's important, is that there's already multiple partitioned rooms. So you can already run several activities. We feel like this is really a move-in ready space for our recreation department, understanding that we might do some additional work in that space, but really just sort of ready to be moved into and used immediately. So in the back of the building, you can see that there's a basketball court. Obviously that's partitioned off. To the right, you can see the pool. And then in between that is locker rooms. There's some office space in the bottom right-hand side. There's also a party room, meeting room, so really available immediately. Right in front of the basketball court, there's a little room there. It's a cycling studio, but it just gives that additional space for a blocked off program. And then on the lower left, where those 3 circles are, that's sort of a multi-use room. So you could do programming for seniors, and you can do programming for youth and whoever during the day. So it's really kind of like a yoga studio type space if you're trying to visualize it. And then in that front area, that's not completely partitioned off, but it really is sort of a separate section. So that's also available. And then in the main area is really where all of the equipment is. So one thing we want to point out is that our negotiations are with the building owner, not with Boston Sports Club. And so there has not been discussion about them leaving their equipment behind or anything like that. Our expectation is that they would take it with them. In terms of, we've had a lot of people ask, could we negotiate with them? Could we ask them to leave equipment? We haven't evaluated that equipment. We don't know how old it is. We don't know what the feasibility of it is. And really the use of that space is going to come out of the public engagement process. So at this point, we don't know that that's something that we want to offer, or that the community wants us to offer. So as I mentioned, we would relocate the recreation department offices to the second floor of that building. Eventually, we would relocate the senior center to the first floor. So if you're thinking about comparison, the senior center currently is 8,655 square feet. The building was built in 1989. The idea would be that we would have a consultant come in, or an architecture firm come in and do charrette processes with the community, and then also do stakeholder interviews so that we could really conceptualize that space and then ultimately choose a design and move forward. And at that point, that's when we would move the senior center once that construction was done. And then at this point, we have no identified need for that building, so we would dispose of that building. Meaning that we would sell it. And just so that we're clear, because there's a lot of discussion about the opportunity for affordable housing there, even the Affordable Housing Trust is interested, that would still have to be a disposition of that building from the select board to the Affordable Housing Trust. So disposition doesn't mean that it wouldn't, we would have no control over the needs that it served. It just means that it wouldn't be under the select board anymore. The recreation department and senior center director have done a lot of work to identify the value of this building in terms of what their abilities would be. So without sort of reading through all of this, the recreation department would be able to program space during the day, which they can't really do right now. They'd be able to offer a lot more classes, swim lessons at the pool. Senior center would have the ability to create more spaces so that they could run programs concurrently. So right now, we they're just unable to run things concurrently. And then this is like some additional programming ideas that they have. So there really is just no end to the ideas that they have and the ability of us to use that building. In addition to recreation and senior center, we just want to be really clear that it's a community center. So we fully expect that the space would be available to the community for events, meetings. One of the things that we talked about that we would really love to do is move elections to this building. Right now, election equipment is sort of stored everywhere and has to be brought over to the high school. It impacts the school day. We would love to store all the election equipment at the community center and then be able to hold elections at the community center. This just shows the pool, just really speaking to the lack of lifeguards that we had for the beach. Just wanted to say that one of the things that Boston Sports Club does, and they've actually already reached out to us, is that they hire this third-party vendor that provides all of the lifeguards and does all of the testing for the pool. So obviously that's a contract, but that's a way that we would be able to staff the pool and really offer, water aerobics, birthday parties, any sort of thing that we can think of. So the Boston Sports Club contracts with this third party, we're understanding through talking to them what the opportunity is. There's also an idea for expanded program hours. So these are just ideas. So based on our recreation director's connections in other communities, this seems to be the schedule that would work and that does work in other communities. Again, subject to change as appropriate, discussions to be had, but this would really be that expanded use, so 8 to 8. I think the point here is that it would be open later in the evening. It's not going to close when town hall closes. It would be open on Saturdays, and then right now we're anticipating it closed on Sundays based on what other communities do, but certainly part of the conversation. And then just to go into the costs, so there's the property purchase, which I already mentioned. That's estimated borrow, so there is that tax impact. That's Article 3 on the warrant. Article 4 is a public engagement, design, and due diligence. So this is an estimate at this point because we're finalizing that due diligence number. But $85,000 for that public engagement is what I had mentioned. And that would get us to the point where we would have numbers for construction, so that we would go to a future town meeting for construction. Estimated utilities. Our estimated utilities are based on the Forbes Municipal Building plus 15%, because this building is 15% larger than that building. And we know that there's a pool, so it makes it a little different, of course, but we also have a 24-hour department at that Forbes Municipal Building, so we thought it was a good comparison. And then the estimated due diligence, which is the phase one environmental assessments and assessment of all of the utilities, so HVAC, electrical, things like that we're working through. So that's a free cash article, so no tax impact. In FY25, we would anticipate budgeting for carrying costs. So the maintenance, there's a common area maintenance agreement which we would be a party to. So that number is the number that we've been quoted, that $157,440. Even though we expect to take possession of the building in this fiscal year, part of the negotiation was that we would not be subject to the common area maintenance for 6 months. So that would get us into FY25 before we would need to pay that. And then utilities, and then estimated personnel costs. These are additional costs. So the creation of a community center manager position in the recreation department, an additional custodian in the DPW, and then increasing the program and volunteer coordinator hours in the senior center up to 40 hours. So when you're looking at all of those operating expenses, those would go into the FY25 budget, and that's at $65,224. So that's the additional carrying costs you would see in the budget. You'd also see that the debt service, so the $113 in FY25 for the purchase of the building. Program costs, we expect the programs to run similar to how they do now, which is that they pay for themselves. So, we collect fees in the recreation department. We do budget a little bit for the senior center, but a lot of that is self-sustaining or comes through grants. And then they're able to offer, programs with a fee and then also free programs. And they do all of that, especially the recreation department, through their revolving account. So even though we anticipate additional programming, we don't anticipate additional tax burden for these programs. And then a future town meeting article would be that construction costs. So on the left is just a list of things that may or may not be included. I just want to, people are sort of wondering, well, what will come out of community engagement? So we know that we need a commercial kitchen if we're moving the senior center there. We probably will be looking at some additional bathroom facilities. There's been discussion about adding windows on the first floor to the sides of the building, because right now in the lower level, there's no windows on the sides, on the two sides, and then there's windows in the front. And then other just sort of ideas. So cafe, game room, music room, computer lab, walking track. These are just things that are coming up. They're not set in stone. Depending on what we end up conceptualizing, we would anticipate being able to pay for it out of available funds. So currently we have sale of real estate. We also get Pulte payments. A portion of those can be used to support seniors. There's the Community Preservation Act funds, which obviously the CPC would have to agree to let us use. And then, if we were to sell the senior center, that money would go into sale of real estate, which could be used to pay for some of these, some of the debt service on either the purchase or the fit up if we had to borrow for that. And then this is the proposed timeline. So the select board has not, I should fix that. The select board has not executed this purchase and sale. They'll consider that at the October 10th meeting. Purchase and sale has many contingencies in it. There's a whole frequently asked questions document on the website, so please take a look at it. But again, many contingencies within the purchase and sale. We have to agree that, that all of our inspections are, that we're satisfied with them. We have to agree on indemnity. We have to have the town meeting vote, which is probably the most important contingency. So just because the select board signs the P&S does not mean that the town must move forward. I do want to stress, though, that the vote at the October town meeting is the vote to allow the select board to purchase the building. It's not that we have to purchase the building. So we will not be probably complete with our due diligence by the October town meeting. The select board does not have to purchase it if anything concerning comes up in the due diligence. And then once we get the property, when we close, then we'll start that community engagement process so that hopefully we can be prepared for next fall. And then this is the public information session. So those are all my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions. We really think that this is a win-win. So it's really good for the community. It's something the community's been asking for, and it really does for this committee meet economic development goals in terms of walkability, connectivity in the downtown, and really revitalization of that whole space. So.
Oh, great presentation.
Thanks.
Well done. And I think you just hit the nail on the head that it does really touch upon all the things that the EDC has, and as far as our goals in the master plan and beyond that. So, are you looking for a vote of support of this from the EDC?
I think if you feel that that's something that you want to do, I will tell you that the Master Plan Implementation Committee voted majority in favor of supporting. I know the Planning Board's going to take that up tonight. I believe Recreation Commission has already voted, so a few different committees that are really finding that this project will meet their goals are choosing to at least take the vote.
Sure. So. How do members feel? Do we want to have a vote on this? And one of the reasons why I ask is because I will have to recuse myself from any vote, given my relationship with the Grossman Development.
I just had a quick question for Christy. The average family, I know that it'll be higher the first year, $113 in taxes, $84, and then 65 per family. Is that for maintenance? So it would be 100 and something altogether.
Yeah, it's a little. It's
okay.
like 145 to 150. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thank you, Christy, very much. Looking forward to seeing that again tonight. But in one of the things, when you talk about the building, the first floor is 31,000 square feet. The senior center currently is 8,700 square feet. I mean, we could double the size of the senior center and then still have the opportunity to add other programs down there. It is just, I think, a tremendous opportunity. I'm very hopeful that it passes, and if so, then I really look forward to the charrette and the feedback we receive on how best to implement this opportunity.
Any other comments or questions?
So Christie, the things like the pool and the basketball courts, the intent is to keep them as is, if possible?
Definitely the basketball court. I think we've heard from sort of two sides on the pool as to whether or not that should be filled in or if it's an asset for the building. At this point, we're exploring how we would maintain and use the pool because we assume that the community will want to keep it, but it could come out, I guess it could come out of that public engagement process that folks would rather fill it in. I just don't know what the cost of that would be.
That's great, thanks, that's really helpful.
Do you guys want to vote on take a vote as to whether or not the EDC wants to support this? And if so, I'm going to let Sandy run with this as her first job as vice chair.
So I think we should vote just to support, if you want to support this, I think we should call a vote. So motion to accept or support the building of the community center in Westborough. Please state comments.
Second.
Your roll call.
Go ahead, somebody want to start?
So it would probably be the support of the two articles, so Articles 3 and 4.
Okay.
Just
support Articles 3 and 4.
Yeah, I would think as a matter of course, Sandy, Mark can help you draft some kind of letter of support to the select board in behalf of the EDC.
Happy to do that.
Okay.
They can make that part of the motion, maybe. Because
All right,
this
so
committee.
Motions for the. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, because this committee won't be able to meet again, so we won't really see the letter per se. I suppose you could.
You could just draft the vote.
Right.
I mean, really, I think most of these, even the letters are good, but it's just that we need someone to report it out at town meeting. So as long as someone is at town meeting to report it out, then the town meeting knows what the outcome was.
Okay.
And I'm happy to, if I can, I don't know if I'm allowed.
So I make a motion to.
Sure, Sandy, sorry.
That's okay. I'm gonna make a motion to support Article 3 and 4 and for the EDC to draft a letter of support for these two articles.
So I second, Kenny second, sorry.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm willing to start the vote. Keough, yes.
Bagden, yes.
Kenny, yes?
Williams, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Gingras, yes.
Moreau, yes. Riley, yes.
Sandy.
Sounds like a you.
Yeah.
Kearney, yes.
All right, great.
901. Is that what that was?
901, yep.
901.
Yep.
Okay.
One abstaining. All right, thank you. Thanks, Sandy. It didn't mean for it to be a complicated one, but you did a good job with it for your first job. No, that's not your fault. Wait. Okay, on with the agenda. Next on, we have the change of occupancy permits. Fred.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to present that. I apologize. I should have probably talked to this committee about this before. The Inspectional Services instituted this type of inspection, or permit, I should say, a few years ago. And it's not, to be clear, it's not a mandatory permit, just I'm clear on that. It was meant as a way, we were getting requests that if a new occupant was moving into an existing space, they were asking for occupancy permit or an occupancy certificate, if you will. So what we did is we fashioned up what we call as a change of occupant. The intent is that if you're moving into what was previously a vacant space as a new business owner, again, it's not a requirement, but if you wanted to just make sure that the life safety issues were okay, so if it was a sprinkler building, we would check the sprinklers, the fire alarm, exits, emergency lights. So if you were basically just doing paint and paper and not doing anything that would create a real building permit. We would come in, the fire department and ourselves, building inspectional services would just make sure that the life safety was okay. This is one permit that a contractor is not necessarily required. It could be the business owner that pulls it. Some of the malls have now gotten accustomed to this, so a lot of times they do suggest to their new customers to come in and pull that permit, so we can do those checks for the individual. The intent is not to make it a heavy lift. It's a $100 fee. Again, the business owner can pull it. We've done it. An example of it was actually Spirit of Halloween. They did it last year. They did it again this year. So it's very similar to an annual inspection, but it's businesses and companies we wouldn't normally go into unless we're asked to. And if there is any deficiencies, regardless of how they happen, we would just ask them to correct that. That's when they may have to hire an electrician or a contractor of some sort to make the correction. If it's specifically related to life safety, and we really don't care how it happened, if there was some work that was done that shouldn't have been done, that occasionally comes up. We don't really get into the weeds. We don't fine people. It's not meant as a punitive permit, just to be clear. But as I said, I probably should have mentioned this committee. It's a good requirement, but it's not mandatory, just to be clear on that.
So a tenant has the option as to whether or not, it's probably from a licensing perspective, if they have state licenses that they need to show that they have a certificate of occupancy, then they will 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 need to reach out to you guys to do this. But if it's somebody else that doesn't need that, there's no requirement, they don't have to apply for this and don't have to pay the $100?
No,
it's like an
because
office user that one office user moved out and the other guy left their furniture behind, and somebody else moves in, doesn't do a thing to it. Do they need to go pull this permit?
No, and to be clear, they do not. So in fact, it's impossible for us to know sometimes when a new tenant moves into a space. So that's why I want to stress, it's not a state requirement, it's not a local requirement, it's just a suggestion. Some of the landowners have embraced it, so they've gotten used to it. They understand that it's not as heavy a lift as what they originally thought. It's basically things they should be doing in the buildings anyway. It's routine maintenance. So there should be an annual inspection on sprinklers and fire alarms if those are in your buildings. The emergency lights, exit signs, those should always be functioning. So it's not that we're asking the property owners to do any more than what they should be doing from a maintenance standpoint. But to be clear, it is not a requirement. I don't knock on somebody's door and say, hey, you moved in that space illegally. We don't get into that. It's not meant as a punitive type offer. It came out a few years ago that companies would come to us and say, hey, for whatever reason, we need a certificate of occupancy, and we don't just generate those randomly. So this is a way to document that for a minimal amount of fee for both sides. And as I said, the property owners have gotten kind of used to that, and they've actually suggested to some of their tenants to apply for the change of occupant. And it becomes critical when you have places like the Spirit of Halloween, where they actually they don't change the space per se, but they do a fit up, so it's important to go in there, just make sure the egress paths are correct. That even though they don't need a full building permit, it's just a way for us to make sure that they're safe when they enter those spaces. So
it sounds like to get the word out, we really need to get to the landowners, landlords. Do we have you thought about a way to do that? Is it something on the website? Is it?
No, but that's certainly, I can talk to Mark about that. I mean, and that position has oftentimes, when they have first contact with a business, they do suggest that we do have that permit available. So that they can check and they can ask for that permit. So the first line of contact has been previously the economic development coordinator to kind of get that word out. There are the Lyman Street facility that is run by the Colangelos. They've kind of got acclimated to this, so the few buildings they have out there, they've gotten used to their customers doing that, or they're suggesting to their customers. Jen Hung on 57 East Main Street has gotten used to this too. We were actually, when we did the pop-up, that came up, and we were able to make a correction to something that wasn't quite right on a sprinkler system, and
Yeah.
so.
But if a tenant's doing a fit-up, they're gonna go through that process anyway, so,
Well, a fit-up is different. This is strictly if you're basically paint and paper and moving in. So it's
Right.
not meant to
Right.
be a full permit per se.
Yep.
If you need a permit because you're doing work or changing the interior space, that's completely different, and the process would be different. This, as I said, is a much easier lift, and
Right.
it's something we could turn around typically pretty quickly, unless there's issues that come up.
right. But I guess the point that I'm getting at is if a tenant is doing a full fit-up, not only are you inspecting the work that they're doing, but you're also taking a look at the fire safety within the entire building and stuff.
That is absolutely correct. You're correct. So as far as the safety test, a lot of it does go back to the property owner because it is for the whole building. So oftentimes, it's not a change of occupant for a whole building, it's a
Right.
space they're in.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if any of Mark's tenants have done this, or maybe they may have, so it's a good idea for them to know that too, that usually their maintenance is pretty good, so it's not really an issue. It's just to make sure that the annual stuff is being taken
Sure.
care of.
Yep, okay.
Is this something their insurers may be asking of them? Is that why they may need this?
It could be. I mean, certainly when they move into a new space, it's always good to make sure that things are working so they don't, that if there is an emergency, they can get out of the space. That's really what the intent is, to just make sure that it's safe for
Right.
both the business owner and anybody that may be coming into the space.
So just to clarify, Fred, so
Sure.
this is more building owner versus owner of the business or the tenant of the building?
No, it typically goes back to the tenant moving in,
Uh-huh.
but the remedies, if there's deficiencies in the sprinkler system per se, then it's hard for me to say, but it should be the property owner that might be able to correct that, especially if it's a new business just moving in. They wouldn't, the business owner wouldn't typically know if the sprinkler system is correct, if the fire alarm is functional, if the emergency lights are working, if the exit signs. It's not something they think of. I wouldn't think. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'm really not thinking about how I get out of my building. I'm just thinking about getting into it. So we can't mandate who makes the corrections if there are deficiencies, but oftentimes we do try to get the property owners, as I said, now that they've gotten more acclimated over the last few years about this, generally they're a little bit more cooperative, because it is the responsibility of the property owner if the whole building is deficient for one reason or another. It shouldn't really fall to the business owner, but we can't dictate who would make a correction if there was. Some of it depends on the lease too.
Yeah.
So if it was an exit sign that was there that just hadn't been maintained, for instance, we can't tell the property owner that they have to fix it, but you would think kind of common sense jumps in here at some point too, but anyway, I didn't mean to belabor this, but.
No, that's helpful. We'll talk offline.
All right, any other questions for Fred? All right, then on to other business.
Oh, and I'm sorry, since we have a few minutes here, I don't know, some folks missed the planning and community department reports. I don't know, we want to briefly revisit those for those who didn't have access
Sure.
earlier.
Yep. Were you guys able to hear online Jenny's report? No? Okay. Would you mind, we'll have both
No,
Jenny
I
and
don't.
Fred.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the economy's kind of, let me just say that we've slowed down quite a bit in inspectional services. So we're not seeing the commercial fit-ups that we were in the past few years, certainly. It's probably been the slowest time that I've seen in my 6 years in Westborough. So that's not necessarily a great thing, especially for businesses. Hopefully that'll turn. I think part of it may be due to the presidential elections, but that's only speculation, certainly on my part. Some of our bigger projects certainly have been kind of stagnant, so they still may go forward, but they're kind of on a holding pattern right now. So that's unfortunate, but we'll see how that pans out in the coming months. RAX which is a manufacturing facility on Route 9 that recently took occupancy about 6 months or a year ago. They're planning on a ribbon cutting in conjunction with the chamber, so Mark will get that word out to you, or the chamber will, when that event will be happening, hopefully in the next few weeks or so.
All right.
So
Thank you
for planning, we have an open hearing right now with the planning board for 161 Milk Street, which they're proposing a self-storage facility and offices for MA Restoration, which is in Westborough, and they're just proposing on moving locations. We have a couple of applications that will be coming to the November planning board meeting. One for 225 Turnpike Road. Actually, I think that's the second October meeting, for Zoom Room, which is a dog training business. And then for 134 Fisher Street, which will be a transit-oriented village special permit. And it's a really interesting concept that you don't see very much. It's single-family units, but they're all one bedroom. And they're proposing 18 of them right now in the first phase. And the size of the units is only 620 square feet approximately. So it's definitely, I think, a missing need in many communities, including Westborough, for housing for single people or couples.
Any questions for Fred or Jenny? No? All right. On to other business. Has the position on the EDC been posted yet, Kirsty, do you know?
I don't know. I'll check on that.
Okay.
What's that?
Just wondering if we have an open position now on the EDC.
Yes.
And so if you know of anybody that you think might be of interest, please get the word out.
Yeah, just on that, I was thinking through that, I thought just to get representation, I thought maybe having a business, someone off of Route 9, potentially in a restaurant. I know restaurants might not necessarily fit in, but it's an industry we don't currently have on this board, and also getting someone off of Route 9 would just give a full perspective of the town from all the angles. So we'd have downtown, we'd have Route 9, we'd have some of the office buildings represented, and really kind of get a full, I think looking at who we bring in is as important as filling the spot as well.
Right. And I think we'll be working with the select board, hopefully, on
I think
candidates, if
you
we have
guys make a
multiple candidates.
recommendation,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or I guess
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
sorry. You guys, we.
Any other business?
I just had to say out loud, we do, in the next meeting, I will bring up the EDC awards, because we'll have to put a date down and get that kind of at least cemented in probably in the next meeting. And also start looking at awards potentially at the next meeting. So as people are going through their day, if there's someone out there that you'd like to see recognized, that you think would have a business that needs to be recognized this year, get that to me so we can start making lists and I can start figuring out, because Zach did a nice thing where he wasn't giving out the same 6 awards every year. We had decided that we could rotate depending on what is needed, so we can figure out what businesses we'd like to see win awards. I think we've had a couple restaurants open, so I think maybe a foodie award would be a nice thing to see again this year. But just to get kind of the ball rolling on that is what I want people to kind of think about.
The community center would be a great place to hold those in the future.
In the future, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice plug.
2027.
I was thinking that. Never mind, I won't say it out loud. I'll just keep it in my head for now.
I have one quick thing. I just want to say that Arts and Common on Saturday was a big
Oh, yes.
success, despite the fact that until the 11th hour, we were trying to figure out whether we were going to move it inside or keep it outside. And there was a little bit of mud, but otherwise the weather held, and I know some of you all attended, and it was a good turnout. We were happy with it, considering that we almost had to go inside. And looking at the surveys, vendors were really happy. It seemed like the attendees were happy, so we were happy.
Awesome.
Yeah, so, and the town was great, the police, fire, all that, they worked so well with us, so,
That's great.
select board.
Ollie, thank you for saying that, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I'd like to update you too on the EV charging
Right.
thing they had the show they had, actually, because Ben Bowers, the sustainability individual that the town now has, did attend that, and he said he was actually pleasantly surprised. He thought the attendance was phenomenal. So that's good to see that that's taking some traction, and in the coming months and years that that group, sustainability, will be working closely with the EDC as they've done in the past, so that there's a lot of synergy that's starting to come out of that.
Yeah, that's great.
He said they printed 135 registration cards and ran out of registration cards in the course of the day, so they had more people than they had anticipated even coming through the door, which is a great thing.
Sean or Christie, any update on the golf club, golf course building committee?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. So the committee came to us at our last meeting and made a recommendation, which we approved. And their recommendation is is not to rehab the building, but to do a total overhaul of the building. And so Chrissy can talk to the next steps, but I think it's now to put together a building committee that the town manager would appoint.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there was some discussion about the financing of that project, and so we talked about the potential for the enterprise fund, where the building supports the golf course, and then also, because it would include a restaurant, potential lease payments that would subsidize it, so.
Yeah. Okay, great. Anything else? If not, if somebody wants to make a motion to close the meeting, that would be great.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Alexander, yes?
Bagden, yes.
Kenny, yes?
Williams, yes.
Leonardo, yes.
Jingris, yes.
Keo, yes?
Rayleigh, yes.
I might have lost Sandy.
I think we lost Sandy, so. All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next month.
Oh, you did, okay.
Take care.